How dare?
And then I will just delete it.
Rude.
Rude that I'm taking away your slurp sounds. I think
Rude
it was...
that you won't listen to my slurp sounds. They're one of my authentic sounds.
Oh, I see. We're playing that card, are we?
I'm just kidding. It is not okay to force people to do things that they don't want to do.
I think that's another thing that's really hard for people to be okay with is the concept of boundaries and knowing that, you know, you can be quote unquote too much for someone without boundaries. Like if they don't place boundaries around it, then they get overwhelmed. They don't know how to set boundaries around you. And like that might be a thing that you then internalize because people set boundaries around being able to be regulated around you. Same thing with you around them. So it's like, I know that with you have, what is the picking thing called?
Scoriation disorder.
Yeah. And sometimes the picking sounds literally make me want to curl up in a ball.
Meanwhile, if I don't pick, I want to curl up. No, I don't want to curl up. I want to crawl out of my skin.
Yeah. So it's not like I'm trying to shut that down necessarily, but both of us have to kind of figure out ways to navigate that if we want to spend time together and you're really needing that accommodation and I'm really struggling with sound sensitivity.
And that's when you hand me my fidgets.
Yes.
Yeah. So this is kind of funny that we were just launching into my stupid slurp sounds. Deliberately made to drive you crazy because that's what marriage is all about. Mm-hmm. I was thinking for today about talking about authenticity. Mm-hmm. And
that's weird. It's almost like it's a fourth of our namesake.
Living Luna. Loving unashamed and nurturing.
Nope.
Normalizing.
There we go.
Authenticity. Yeah, I'm ADHD as fuck today.
Even went on a float today.
I did, and I wiggled the whole time.
Maybe it's because of the fact that you were on a float that your brain is like, I wasn't really stimulated that entire hour. Now I'm going to go into hyperdrive.
Yep. And forget the name of my own show. Just like I forget how old I am on a regular basis.
Yep.
Which you did not realize was a thing until the other day.
Indeed.
But yeah, so boundaries.
I know your age.
I'm glad someone does. Mm-hmm. I routinely ask you and Justin how old I am.
Yeah. Do you even remember the year you were born?
Yeah. That's easy for me to remember.
I find it fun because it's like you were born in a year that makes doing the math a little difficult, but like, so it stimulates my brain to like do the math gymnastics in my head. And I'm like, how old is she? Oh, yeah. It's fun practice.
I am glad you enjoy mental math gymnastics because I certainly don't. So this boundary piece that you brought up is really interesting, like how we can be authentic and people can still have boundaries around it. Mm-hmm. Because I was talking to a client the other day and, well, two actually, and this sort of theme came up about being authentically themselves versus enabling others or protecting others by not being themselves. Mm-hmm. And I thought that was really interesting that came up on literally the same day, right before we're recording this. And in both cases, these clients are struggling to be authentically themselves because they're afraid of hurting others.
So why do you think that is?
Because they don't know how to do boundaries. And they don't trust other people to draw boundaries.
That was what I was, that was where my brain was going, is oftentimes it's not that necessarily we want to go full force, like full, like into a thing without checking in on somebody. So you can check with someone's boundaries if they haven't said it. So if you are feeling in your gut that you're like, this might be too much, I don't know, but you want to you're like, I might be oversharing, or I feel like all I've been doing has been talking the whole time and no one else has been stepping in, so maybe they're bored with me. Like, you can always check in and be like, hey, I just want to let you know that I love talking about this stuff, but if there's ever time that you're noticing yourself not being present or fully interested, or that's okay, like, we can split it up in other conversations throughout our time together. But it also takes guts to be able to admit that and check in, and because they could say, like, that's the thing, is like, they could say, like, yeah, you're right, like, I am like going off into my own world and I'm not really paying attention to this, so we can move, like, can we change the subject? And that can still, neurodivergent people, one of the things that is a symptom, I guess, of especially the autism spectrum, is rejection sensitivity. And even though boundaries are helping make the entire space safe for all people to exist in it, it also can sound like a rejection.
But if it was normalized from the time that we were children, that boundaries are normal and okay, we wouldn't perceive them as rejections. We would perceive them as just, oh, this is what this person needs right now, and it doesn't mean there's anything wrong with me. They're creating their own structure and their own lines in the sand, and we can play in the sand over here. We just can't play in the sand over there, and that's okay. But now boundaries have become this like big terrifying thing for people, where, like, in the one case, it was over communication. Like, this client was over communicating with people because they were reaching out and wanting this client's attention all the time. And they were starting to notice, like, resentment coming up because of that. And through our conversation, they realized, like, oh, I could just not respond and have the boundary there, and then I'll actually enjoy talking to them when the time is right for me. And so we had a long talk about how the boundaries are a gift in that case, because it's improving the relationship and improving the quality of the relationship. Even if those people might be a little cranky that the client isn't responding right away, they're going to enjoy their interactions more later when that person can authentically show up. And then the other situation was the exact opposite. The client was not wanting to share at all with people because of that, like, I'll be putting too much on them. And not trusting that the other people would be able to draw the boundaries of, like, oh, now's not a good time to talk about that. Like, I can't listen right now. So it's really interesting that you were kind of bringing up that exact same thing that I was. Like, it's okay to check in with people if you don't know where their boundaries are, or to ask even before you launch into something. Like, hey, I'm feeling really tense right now. There was a situation that happened, and I'm wondering if I can vent to you. Would it be okay if I vented to you right now? I don't want any advice. And just being, like, really, really clear about what we want. And then other people can say, nope, not right now. I can't show up for you like that right now because I'm feeling stressed too. Can we just do an activity and I'll listen to you tomorrow? But good Lord, you tell people that and they're like, oh no, I could never do that.
It is hard. I mean, we are therapists, but we're not completely enlightened. Like, we're aware. And so, in our journey of being therapists and relationships with others and each other and everything like that, we also find situations where placing boundaries can be challenging and hard, especially when we might come into different new situations where we don't necessarily know what the appropriate boundary is. And so, like, I've been in situations recently where the situation revolving, certain people coming into our house, I've noticed discomfort and needing more, like, orientation as to when they're coming over. But I've had to change the boundary every time a new situation arose. And so that made things hard for both of us because you were like, I don't know if I can keep track of, with your ADHD, it's like, I can remember the first couple of boundaries, but like, if they're constantly changing, I might not, I might accidentally revert back to one of those past boundaries and not remember one of the current boundaries. And that can also be hard because then it's like, it makes me be like, oh, when you first discover a boundary, you're like, yes, this is going to work. This is the answer to make me feel completely and utterly comfortable in this situation.
If only.
And it sometimes doesn't. And that can be hard too, because a lot of times when we grow and realize, gain more awareness with ourselves, and we change our minds, or we adapt or evolve our answers for people, it can be hard to keep up. I mean, it's similar concepts in terms of advocating for your pronouns or your new name or anything like that. It's like, the more times people might accidentally forget to do that, it's harder for you to remind them of the boundary or remind them of, because it's just like, or if you're changing your name multiple times because you're experimenting with that to see what feels right. And it's like, you can see the irritation people have in terms of being like, ugh, like, I'm trying my best, but oh my gosh, I have like the rest of my life to worry about other things. So like this little thing, like, can you not be upset at this sort of thing? So that's just the concept of like, since we are constantly living these situations as therapists too, like, even when our clients come up to us and are like, holy shit, this is really hard, I'm like, yep.
Oh, I always tell people, like, easier said than done, and it's gonna take practice, but even being authentic takes practice because we're not taught it. Mm-hmm. It's this, we come into this world, and with any luck, we survive until we're like 6 in our own little world, mm-hmm. and without all of the rules. But we see routinely, like, around the time the kids start going to school, mm-hmm. and those gender norms start to get pushed, and expectations on grades begin to get pushed, mm-hmm. and all of the societal social norms, mm-hmm. and capitalism. All of that starts to compound, and kids start to lose sense of who they are, mm-hmm. and start to try to fit in to what's expected of them.
And that's also developmental, is, you want to fit in, but you don't realize what you're sacrificing in order to fit in.
And then that carries into adulthood.
Yay! Not yay, but yes. So we end up going into this realm of, like, I mean, I just did a presentation the other day regarding, like, sensory needs. Like, that was one of the concepts. And a lot of neurodivergent kids are either hyposensitive or hypersensitive. So hyposensitive means, like, they are sensory seeking. So they're, like, not receiving enough, like, tactile information that their body causes them to seek it out. So I'm, like, hyposensitive in terms of, like, movement, so I have to go and seek movement in more ways. So that's why I do more exercise in certain ways to help with that. Hypersensitive is people who need to wear, like, the headphones or the earplugs or anything, like, I mean, that's just for hearing, but, like, sunglasses or things to help them, because the way that they process sensory needs is so intense. Mm-hmm. And there are different people with different types. Like, I have hypersensitivities and hyposensitivities in different sensory areas. So with parents, number one goal is to keep the children safe. If a child is seeking sensory information and it's in an unsafe way, this is what historically has been done. It's changing now, thankfully. But parents used to shut down the entire behavior because they're just seeking this unsafe thing, not they're seeking the sensory need, and how do we redirect this? Mm-hmm. And then same thing with the concept of hypersensitivity. You were often just told that you were too sensitive.
Right.
So it's this invalidating concept that we weren't realizing was happening. And so now we grow up as adults and are like, wait, but I didn't realize that this stimming would help me, or I didn't realize that this echolalia thing that I did as a kid was helpful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that piece about us being able to accommodate for our own needs and be authentic. Like, I've worked with so many people who are like, oh, I startle at loud sounds and I don't like loud noises, or I don't like going into crowds, or, anything. And then they're like, but I'm going to make myself do it anyway. And I'm not going to use a tool like wearing headphones or something because people will think I'm weird. Mm. That constant fear of judgment if we don't fit into the box of society makes authenticity really, really difficult. And that's something that I hope we and anybody listening to this can start to encourage in others is, be authentic and meet your own needs, meet yourself where you are at, mm-hmm. and encourage others to do the same. Like, does it hurt you if someone else is wearing headphones? Does it hurt you if someone else is wearing sunglasses? Does it hurt you if you have a friend who really does not want to go to a big crowded event with you? Mm-hmm. Like, do something else. And yet society has these rigid rules and expectations. Yeah. Everything from clothing, like, speaking of sensory needs, there are some people that, like, wearing really stiff formal clothing would be insanely uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. Just the types of fabrics and the cuts and the fits and all of that. So why do we force people to wear certain clothing to work? Yeah. If that doesn't authentically help that person, it doesn't make any sense to me. I've been thinking a lot lately about Saoirse Clare, who's the Starseed coach, talks in, I think it was in her webinar that she talked about this, but that we get in the habit of seeking more often because that's what society sort of expects us to do, right? Mm-hmm. Like, we're supposed to live some ideal, rich life, but that when we sit back and we look at what a good life really looks like versus where we're at now, we often find that the gap is not as big as we think it is. Mm-hmm. And people in power have created such a gap, mm-hmm. between what they have and what a genuinely good life could look like, mm-hmm. a meaningful life that doesn't harm others. Right. That, like, they're never going to give that up. Yep. They're going to rickroll us. Never going to give that up. Never going to let that down. Damn it. Never going to turn around. You are supposed to pun, not rickroll. Finding a rickroll in that is a type of wordplay. It's fine. Oh, boy. Anyway, but yes. But that's the thing is, like, it's a very, like, existentialist concept of, you can create your own happiness, and, like, happiness is this, it's close, but, like, at the same time, there are so many people that could benefit if there was more help provided to them and more accommodations provided to them, and, more minimum wage with benefits, like minimum wage being, like, actually what it needs to be. Rent not being stupidly high. The rent is too damn high, party. Yeah, exactly. That's my political party. That is your political party. The rent is too damn high. Yep. Yep. So I feel that, and
And at the, you know, so it's like we can create our own happiness. But I'm also thinking about the people that, you know, are single parent minorities struggling, like living out of their car because they can't afford rent. And even if they could afford rent, like it was causing them to spiral into this, like, if you afford rent, like there's something like, if you're literally working paycheck to paycheck, like that's how you're living, and you're depending on like paying rent with that, and you haven't like saved up any money, it's causing you to stay with the only concept of doing rent and not invest in house. So if like the rent was a little less expensive, less people, like more people would be able to invest in getting houses.
And the thing is that I find people that are living that ideal of an authentic life of love and compassion will help those who are in that situation where they're living paycheck to paycheck, or maybe they don't have food, or, you know, maybe they're struggling to get school supplies for their kids. Like when I think about what I want us to do with our business, it's live our nice little life with our cute little house, our little backyard garden next to the park, and maybe take a vacation once or twice a year. And then and admittedly, I'd really like to get a eco-friendly car because I'm all about environmentalism.
Yes.
But like, if we got rich, quote unquote rich, like I would be giving that back to the community, because I'd be looking at my life going, oh, well, I have what I need and I'm comfortable. Yeah. So every bit that I can spare, I'm going to donate to a soup kitchen. I'm going to put into an environmental project. I'm going to put towards school supplies for kids in need, or pay for summer camp, or, you know, all these things, versus those people in power who are like, nope, nope, we're not going to give, because we're afraid of closing that gap between us and them, you know, the other. So I totally hear what you're saying about that, you know, that there are a lot of people that can't close that gap because the system is against them. But the more people that step into that authenticity of being themselves and allowing themselves to follow their passions and feeling okay in their skin, the more they're going to want to give that feeling back to the world.
Yeah. And because when you were talking about that, and I was thinking more about people not in a place to, you know, really seek the happiness that they can because they're stuck in this systemic situation. It, like, they're in survival mode.
Right.
Like, like materialistic survival mode. Like, due to the pandemic, a lot of us are in, like, mental, emotional survival mode. And some materialistic survival mode as well. But, like, the people who are really struggling with the basic needs, it's kind of like, when does exploring authenticity really come into play for you? Like, you know, when you're stressed.
It's that Maslow.
Yeah, Maslow.
I always want to say Pavlov. Maslow's hierarchy of needs, though. Like, when you're in that survival mode and you're down at the bottom of the pyramid, you can't move towards self-actualization until your survival needs
I avoid giving that man credit.
Oh boy.
Because of the fact that he apparently, like, again, here, I'll find another article that talks about this, but apparently Maslow stole a Native American concept.
Oh, damn it.
And flipped it for his own white man concept, because Native Americans are all about community.
Right.
So, like, their pyramid was reversed so that you can help the community as best you can.
Of course.
And then
this makes a whole lot of sense, doesn't it?
Yeah. And so I can hear that, and Maslow's hierarchy of needs is taught in our psych classes, along with a bunch of other white men's theories.
I was venting about Freud the other day.
Oh, yeah. if you want to get psychologists or any psych major, anyone on a soapbox, just bring up Freud and we will.
Unless they're a cishet white man in their 60s, because I went to school with a few of those that were all about Freud.
Oh, okay. Cool.
Yeah. Anyway, so yet again, the racist constructs flipping our societal perspective, because I'm like so on board with like that hierarchy of needs would not exist if we banded together as a human community. Mm-hmm. And I know this sounds like very, I guess, socialism, gasp. And I'm fine with claiming that label, because, it's about everybody's
socialist,
needs.
Liberal hippies.
Ah, damn.
Yikes. Heck.
Like, if everybody's needs were met, then more people's needs would be able to get to higher heights.
Yeah.
Like, if I could just give people therapy and get garden supplies, like literally, they bring me vegetables, some farm fresh chicken eggs from their beloved chickens that they take good care of.
Yep.
And
named Betty and
Pete.
Is Pete giving the eggs?
No, but Pete's the rooster that wakes them all up.
Oh, okay.
Gets them rallied and jazzed for the day.
Pete's like, let's make some eggs.
Yeah. But like, I would so love labor exchange. Like, you have your passion of building. Well, okay. Build me a cute bookshelf and I will, give you therapy for a month.
My gosh, my brain, I'm sorry about this materialistic concept because I was like, I know podcasts that have pins.
Oh boy.
And I was like, if you're a designer for pins, please design Pete the Rooster for a pin.
Is Pete the Rooster going to become our mascot?
Yep.
I'm over here like thinking of a rooster noise, and I'm not going to try and make it.
I had to do the rooster noise for a puppet show that my mom did for Vacation Bible
Please
School.
Do it.
I held the rooster up at the top of like the barn that we created, and I was like, arr, arr, arr.
It's beautiful.
Yep. Anyway, but yeah, I was talking to someone about this too, of like, I wish that the government was like, hello, you should be seeing, like, we will be paying you this this amount per client, sort of thing. And so clients will just come to us with the universal health care, and so we just provide therapy. And with that, we don't have to be like, oh, you're on Medicare and you're only going to pay me $10 and I'm not going to be able to pay my mortgage because of this. Like, I hate that. I hate that based off of, like, I hope that at some point I can afford doing some pro bono work with some clients. But like, I hate that that's a thing with a lot of people who desperately need therapy, is the fact that they're stuck with, the fact that like they're stuck with the burnt out, overworked, like, social workers that have caseloads of like 50 people,
who end up saying some janky ass shit. Let me tell you, because I hear horror stories all the time.
Right, and it's like, and it sucks because it's like that could be avoided if these social workers weren't so burnt out.
Right, if they had like 15 clients as opposed to 50.
Yeah,
I've heard as high as like 80.
Yeah, and of course school counselors, like, they'll be in charge of a whole grade, which is like 300 kids.
Yeah, so they're not really working one-on-one.
Right, and it's like, that's all like solution-based focused concepts. Like, you can't necessarily sit with the kids.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, how are we going to ever create a safe space if we're like, all right, 50 minutes are up, bye! Like, did we solve anything? It's going to make people more anxious of like solving the problem instead of like sitting with their emotion and like really validating their experience because of the fact that, like, now I'm just like, and I'm pro socialism and universal healthcare now. Like, let's get on board. Let's.
Yeah, and going back to the authenticity piece with that too, like, if we constantly feel like we have to be achieving at this high level because that's what's expected. Like, how are we supposed to tap into what we really want? And the emotions piece that you mentioned, authenticity is being able to sit with all of our emotions and not shove them down. But we can't do that.
I mean, it's
when we're burnt out.
Right. And at the same time, it's like, if people, like, we don't have a lot of frustration tolerance as a society. Like, Safriana's eyes got real wide.
Oh, I just had several people flash through my mind that I've worked with that, like, literally have no discomfort tolerance.
Right. And that's the thing is, like, we were raised by families that were like, you know, I can't handle your tantrum, or I can't like, their frustration. It's generational. Like, they were told that their emotions weren't valid and were shut down by their families because they were uncomfortable with sitting with those emotions. And then that led to them teaching us, like, hello, like, you know, you're too sensitive or too much, or giving us those beliefs about ourselves that then make us be like, I need to get back to neutral right away, because if I don't, then people are going to judge me and not want to be around me, because based off of my experience, no one has frustration tolerance, and therefore no one is going to want to be around me when I'm in this state, because even I don't want to be around me in this state because I've been taught that by other people.
Right. Yeah. And judgment, the constant state of judgment that we find ourselves in, does make it really hard to have tolerance, because if we're constantly cycling those negative thoughts about ourselves and others, our window of tolerance is going to be nothing, because our brain is just cluttered full of negativity and hatred and all kinds of poison for ourselves and others. So, and that's why I firmly believe if all of us could just be like, you know what? I want to have blue hair, and I want to use they, them, and I want to dress in nothing but glitter short shorts and tank tops, even when it's winter. Like, okay, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Right? Like, we'd probably automatically want to judge that as a society.
Yeah.
But, like, who's it harming if that person feels happy in their skin? And because they're happy, they're going to be actually a more productive and helpful member of society, and have more capacity to love themselves and others. Like, it just boggles my mind that we fight that so much.
And it might be a parallel process of, like, I didn't get to experience validated emotions, so you don't get to experience validated emotions as well. So it's like, when we're having this paradigm shift of, like, you know, with you and I, like, our shifting of our beliefs into realizing, like, we are allowed to be authentic around each other and around other people, and modeling that for other people, then they can be more authentic around us. And it's this beautiful spiral effect of, like, this upward spiral of, like, all of us building each other up into this beautiful, authentic thing. But if we aren't at that space of authenticity, like, because we struggled through the concept of trying to become authentic, like figuring out what our authentic stuff was and seeing how hard it is. So it's like, when other people are struggling with it, we see it and we're like, oh my gosh, like, I see so much potential. Like, I just want to see you. Like, I like, there's people that, like, well, I can see them, like, their facial reaction struggling, and they're like pausing because they're like, their anxiety, I can sense their anxiety is just causing them to be like, I'm so sorry, I'm, like, doing this stuff. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like, but that's you, and I want to see that. I want to get to know you, and that's beautiful, and you're awesome. But that's, like, people who haven't experienced that, like, people who have generationally been invalidated and been like, you're going to follow the way the world works. That belief, like, seeing other people be authentic and believing that they can't be, can be infuriating.
Right. Something that just popped into my head was the normalization and romanticization.
Words are hard. It's fine.
Words are hard.
If that's real, cool. It sounds right.
I might have made it up.
It's cool.
But we romanticize this concept that we are 50% and we need to find our other half.
Oh my gosh. gosh.
in this monogamy construct, which if you're monogamous, that's totally fine, but you are 100% of a being. And when we actually treat ourselves as 100% and we love ourselves as 100%, then we do build each other up and can do that upward spiral effect of our whole support community just boosting, like giving a leg up to everyone, versus if we operate under this like, oh, well, I can only be actually like 10% of myself or 20% of myself because the rest of it's too much, then that just keeps us all low. We can't build each other up because, I mean, how many people have I ever known that are really good at giving compliments to others, but like are terrible to themselves?
Yeah.
And then it's like, you can't really trust that person's word either because you don't see them living in that action. So again, when we build ourselves up to our 100% and give ourselves permission to love ourselves and be authentically ourselves, we shine that example to others. And we invite them to step up in the same way. And then it can have this reciprocal effect of building up. So, I could soapbox about all of this for days.
I know, and it's just one of those things that we're hoping that, and it's one of those things, like, it's a muscle, like, through the generational trauma of being told that you have to fit in. Like, we talk about authenticity, Brene Brown talks about authenticity, more and more people are talking about authenticity, but it's fucking hard to do,
right?
If you've been taught otherwise, or if you've been in this role of anxiety of wanting to fit in, or worried about people's judgments, which, we can talk all day about, like, who cares if that other person judges? Like, if that's the thing that Safriana had to help me figure out, is like, I would chase friendships and minimize myself to equal what I thought they wanted me to be and be miserable. And Safriana would be like, or you can be 100% yourself around other people, and the people who judge you, like, you don't need them in your life.
Bye, bitch.
And that actually attracts the people who love you for who you are. And that's like an amazing thing. And I know that a lot of us live on a scarcity model, and we're being like, oh my gosh, like, is there actually people out there for me because I've been rejected so many times? That is scary. So again, authenticity is a muscle. We get that it's a scary thing, and we're not saying like it's a light switch that you're like, now that you've listened to this podcast, you're immediately going to be able to just be 100% you.
You've been healed.
Yeah.
So it is. Done.
It's like when we're like, and when someone's upset and you're just calm down. Why didn't I think of that?
And this concept of our energy attracts people it's something that's kind of victimized people, I believe. I've had a lot of clients ask me, why do I always attract these assholes? And like, why are people so awful to me? And not victim mindset, but boundary shift concept is assholes will attach to anyone they possibly can. They are going to look for people without boundaries, and people who are willing to minimize themselves and not be themselves because they want to fit in and they want to find somebody who will tolerate them. And when we stop pretending to be what we're not and we step fully into ourselves and we say, I'm going to have my boundaries, the assholes will try and we'll be like, yo, fuck off. I don't have time for you. Okay, hopefully we'll say it a little bit more compassionate than that. But you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, the assholes will be cranky.
Yeah, and they're going to be cranky, but oh well. Like, we let people into our lives based on how we feel about ourselves.
Yes.
So if we feel like we deserve bad treatment because we believe we are bad, or not enough, or too much, or whatever, that we can't authentically be ourselves, then we're going to let others walk all over us and tell us what we quote unquote should be. Right.
And disclaimer, this is like, you might be hearing this and being like, oh my gosh, I'm a terrible person for, like, you can go down a spiral of being like, I did this to myself sort of thing. But we want to remind you, like, you can instead be mad about society giving you those beliefs.
Right.
Like that wasn't on you. Like, but society built that into you, and be mad about that.
Absolutely.
Like, and you absolutely have the power to shift that mindset and to start setting boundaries, as scary as it is, finding supports, doing all of that stuff. So you are absolutely worthy of setting those boundaries, and, you know, you have value, and, you know, like, you are not bad for potentially getting yourself in that situation and attracting the quote unquote, like, attracting the assholes, because that's just how sometimes, you know, society places us in those situations. And we have to learn from it, and it sucks.
Yeah, and I say all of that with the utmost understanding and love, because I have been there.
Oh, yeah.
I have let people abuse me. I have let people take advantage of me. I have...
Same.
And, you know, looking back, all I can do is offer that past self-compassion for being stuck in thinking that she had to conform to those societal rules. So be a rebel, be a rule breaker. You know, I know it takes courage, but the other side's pretty great.
Yeah.
Water's great over here. Grass is green.
We believe in you.
We believe in you, yeah.
And that's and if you need to rewind and hear that mantra over and over again of the we have trust in you and believe in you, like, do that, because sometimes it's hard to believe in ourselves, and it's doable. It can happen.
Heck and wholesome.
Yeah. I try to, like, help my clients out with that. It makes me sad whenever they don't believe in themselves, and I'm like, but I love talking to you, and
you're wonderful.
You're so good. You're such a good person.
We are all, as Anne Frank believed, I too believe that we are all good at heart.
Yep.
But that has gotten poisoned by all of the shit that we've gotten bogged down with as a culture and
the
society.
systemic privileged stuff.
Yeah. And if we can just, again, step into love and step into compassion and authenticity, that begins to dissolve.
Yep.
So, dissolve those wounds.
Yeah. Well, this was nice. It was funny because we were like, you know, the past couple of sessions, we were like, we're going to have an agenda. And we did. And I was like, this is harder than I thought. And then we literally walked into this closet and started shooting the shit. And you were like, you know what? I got a topic just from this. Yep.
So yeah, being authentic in the moment.
Living Luna.
All right. Bye. Bye.